I feel compelled today to address the myth of body memories. This notion that the body can somehow remember what the mind has forgotten. This is Jurgen Rasmussen, by the way. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis channel. So, I was recently horrified to read on Facebook in a group a well known practitioner of somatic psychotherapy, Havening Touch, make this exact claim. The body remembers what the mind has forgotten. Now, the reason why I'm horrified that this myth is being spread is that this myth, that as Bessel van der Kolk says, the author of The Body Keeps the Score, that trauma is stored somatically, implied in the body, you know, inaccessible to the mind, and that it's stored as these visceral sensations that can come up, and that we might then use these visceral sensations, whether they be nightmares or visual images, flashbacks, itching, blushing, pain, whatever that might be, as evidence of trauma, and to access the trauma and to resolve it. This is a myth, and this myth is exactly the type of thinking that led to what arguably has been the biggest scandal in psychology and mental health since lobotomy, the repressed memory epidemics of the 80s and the 90s. Sadly, these practices are still going on today. You can probably see the danger of this. If people are taught that their pains and their visual images and perhaps their nightmares and their rashes or blushing, whatever it might be, is somehow evidence that there's some buried trauma somewhere in the body, and that you can use these sensations to gain access to whatever really happened. This dramatically increases the chance that you get a lot of false memories. Way too many people have been unfairly accused based upon these sorts of therapies, and way too many people have been sent to prison innocently. So there's every reason to warn against this, right? This has a rich history. The first person of some influence and status, as far as I know, who wrote about this was Pierre Janet in France in 1889. And he talked about dissociation, this idea that very emotionally strong, memories might not be subject to integration, and that it would be stored in a dissociated way outside of consciousness, and be operating as these on this visceral sensation level. Freud in the 1890s had his seduction theory, this idea that people would repress memories of sexual abuse and store it in the unconscious mind, and that therapeutic techniques such as free association and hypnosis, could somehow recover these memories, and that then people could heal. There are other people too who have been marketing this sort of stuff. Of course, Wilhelm Reich, which is with his orgone therapy, marketed this idea. L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology fame, in his 1950s book Dianetics, he claimed to have this mechanism called engrams, where trauma was stored in the body. You had Arthur Janov with primal scream therapy. Then you have authors like Babette Rothschild, and today, of course, Bessel van der Kolk is a main proponent of this theory. Again, he claims that trauma is stored somatically. It's stored as implicit memory, and he also makes a false claim that implicit memory is timeless and not altered by later experience. This is not true, by the way, according to memory science. So even implicit memory is altered and changed over time. Um, and today there's some studies that show that EMDR is the form of psychotherapy that has the highest risk of inducing false memories. And you have to really wonder then about many of these somatic therapies, like Havening Touch, for example, which combines touch and misdirection and EMDR and suggestions, what the risk factors might in fact be. We don't, so there's quite a bit that's known about memory today through memory science. Not everything is understood, but most of the mechanisms behind memory are fairly well understood. We do not store memory in the body, we store it in the brain. Memories are stored in the synapses of the brain, whether that be declarative memory stored in the upper cortex or procedurial movement memory stored in the cerebellum. You need clusters of neurons to store memory. I'll say that again. You need clusters of neurons to actually store and encode a memory. Muscle cells and skin cells do not have the capacity to store memory. So, for example, what's called muscle memory is still occurring in the brain. What's called muscle memory is not occurring in the muscles. These are movement coordination patterns actually encoded in the cerebellum. So it's really, really important to notice this. Also, even implicit memory is real. Like the sort of memory involved in riding a bike or learning how to walk. But again, these are movement patterns stored in the cerebellum, of the brain. And even these memories are subject to modification and alterations over time. Now, implicit memory does not store sensations. It stores movement coordination patterns, as I said, in the cerebellum. But there's this claim by many traumatologists that these, visceral sensations of implicit memory can somehow be translated into declarative or autobiographical memory. And that can't really be done, right? So there's every reason to be skeptical when people like Bessel van der Kolk and Gabor Mate and people who might practice so-called somatic forms of psychotherapy go around claiming that, whether it's massage or EMDR or havening touch or TRE or whatever it might be, that these methods can unblock uh, repressed or dissociated memories. Again, the body does not keep the score. The body does not remember. All memory is stored in the synapses of the brain. So I hope this was useful. A couple of things. I'm starting a newsletter. So if you like these videos and you would like access to more of my thoughts around psychology and change work and memory and false memories and hypnosis and awakening and criminology and what have you, I invite you to go to provocativehypnosis.com and to sign up for my new newsletter. There's 5 articles there already, and starting this upcoming Monday, I'll be writing 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I also have a seminar coming up in June. It's 4 Tuesdays in a row. It's about how to integrate meditation and mindfulness and self-inquiry into a change work, coaching, or psychotherapy practice. So if that is of use for you, check out the seminar page. Also know that I see clients from all over the world online. So if you're looking to either do some mentoring or to make some sort of change in your life, I invite you to go to provocativehypnosis.com, send me an email, and we'll set up a conversation and see if it makes sense to both of us to proceed and to work together as a team. That's what I have for you today. Thanks for listening.